segment, and being that we got you on and we're talking about cranking we're in that summertime patterns now. It's starting to warm up around here in Virginia, and we're starting to get the 90-degree days. I want to talk. I want to.
Where in Virginia are you?
I'm actually in Bedford, Virginia, right near Smith Mountain Lake. So I'm not too far from Roanoke or Lynchburg, if you're familiar with any of those.
Yeah,
And yeah, so about
yeah, yeah. I am.
and but like I say, we just finally, I guess last week's when we started getting our really good 90-degree days. It was, man, it was cool there for a while. I feel like fall a couple of times. I'm like, man, these fish ain't never gonna pull out deep, you know. So
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's been a strange year
yeah, yeah,
everywhere. It has. We was at Gunnersville last week, and there wasn't very many fish out deep at all. I mean, there were some, but and where they were some, they were a lot of boats. But they were still majority of fish were caught in the grass still. So they just, but it'd been cool. The water was like 82 degrees, and the water ought to be 92 right now.
yeah, yeah. We went
So
we went to a little lake down at Farmville area, and I was really surprised when it was reading 78. I was like, wow,
hmm
like it should be in the 80s right now. So well
yeah,
in the 80s, but
you're
now
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about summertime cranking and what are some things kind of starting off and it's summertime, it's hot, and you want to throw that crankbait and find some deep fish. What are some things that you look for to say, hey, I'm going to go throw a crankbait on that right there?
Well, when fish first move out, um, they probably go as deep as they go all year, and then most of the time they'll come back up a little bit. That's why you see a lot of people trying to fish 25 feet deep with a crankbait and post spawn, and they don't do that everywhere. It's certain sections of the country that they do that. I know in Virginia, and you're not too far from Bugs Island. I fished it all my life. As far as lakes on the Roanoke and lakes, even Lake Anna, I mean, any of those lakes, when fish get deep, they get 22, 24 feet. Where other lakes you go to, they get 30 or 40. Uh, and then a lot depends on current, and a lot of it depends on a lot of different things. But the area that you're in, they'll get out there about 22, 24 feet deep. Then only for a week or two, they get rested up a little bit. Then they always come up. That 15, 18-foot range is a really good range to look for fish. That's where they're usually going to feed at. They may be 11 and 20 feet of water, 22, but a lot of times they'll come up to feed. And when you're out there doing that, post spawn fish is totally different than any other time of the year. Post spawn fish are when they're really hungry, they're ganged up. Other words, you're going to catch more than one, more than likely, if you find a little ambush point. And it's one of those things that, you keep searching with a crankbait because they're in a mood to chase something. They want to chase something. You just got to figure out if they want it dredging the bottom or do they want it where it's just hitting the high spots, and that's usually the best deal is when it barely touches. But that's something else you have to figure out. Then you have to figure out, what action and what color. So it sounds harder than it is, but when you've done as much as I have, you can about look at the water and tell about what colors. In the springtime, post spawn fish are usually on a shad color, bluebacks, greenbacks. Chartreuses are pretty good, but not near as good as they are in the middle of the summer. And just find those real sharp breaks. I mean, that's that. If you're going to get in depth with a crankbait in June on post spawn fish, they're going to be on a sharp break somewhere.
Yeah.
Now later in the year they'll change and they get on contour breaks, but post spawn fish get on channel breaks, and they could be halfway in the creeks to the main lake. So I can't narrow it down any more than that.
Yeah.
But usually the backs of the creeks get pretty sad when it comes to You got a few local fish that stay back there, but the majority of the fish are halfway in the creeks and out
Yeah.
and out on the main lake. So that sort of
So
would help you out a lot.
So, like, if you're coming up, let's just say you come up on the mouth of a creek, you're on a point. The main thing you want to look for on that point is, I guess, a spot they come up and feed on, but also where they can pull back off quickly, where they can get down to that deeper water quickly. So, if you're looking at a map, you
Yeah,
can find that sharp break.
yeah. Good rule is where the shallowest water meets the deepest water. So if you're island around that point, I mean, now you got electronics that you can pretty much see them a lot of the times, and then sometimes you can't, but a lot of times you can. And if you're island around a point and it's 15 and it drops pretty sharply to 22, 24, and then all of a sudden you hit a spot where it's 12 feet and drops to 30, like a straight drop, then that's probably going to be their ambush point. That's probably where they're going to be, But don't get me wrong, making casts is the ultimate way to find them. Just because fish can be there and you not see them, and that's happened many, many, many times, especially later in the year. But usually the shallowest part, where the shallowest water meets the deepest water, and that may be the size of a couch. It could be the size of your boat. I mean, it's not going to be a great big area. It ain't going to be like it's a 20-yard stretch.
Yeah.
You're looking at somewhere that's 2 to 5 yards. So
exactly. You're trying to look for those something a little different, that's right there on that point or ledge.
Yep. And it's usually always associated with a hard bottom on post-spawn fish. So it could be shells, it could be rocks, it could be gravel, but it needs to have wood on it. So there again, the hard bottom is the main thing.
Yeah, yeah. They like to have that rock. So
yeah.
Now, when it comes to, like, say, let's just talk like the dredger, where you're fishing 20-some foot of water. What is your rod and reel and your line set up? To get maximum depth, but to keep the right action of that bait? What is your setup for that?
Well, I use a 7.6, one of my rods, David Fritts crankbait rod. They're $79. I mean, it's something that don't break you up. They're a fantastic rod. Actually, it's one of Lou's best-selling rods. It's called the Perfect Crankbait Rod. We make it in a 7.11, and we make it in a 9-footer. The 9-footer let me tell you, the 7.6 will outthrow a 7-foot by about 8 yards. The 7.11 will outthrow the 7.6 by about 5 yards. But then when you go to the 9-foot, it doesn't throw any further unless you're throwing with the wind or crosswind or no wind. Then you can throw about 10 yards further than that. But it takes a tall person to throw a 9-foot rod.
Yeah.
And that's just a big rod. But if fish get 20 plus feet deep, it's a big asset. If they're 20, if they're 21, 22 or less, then your 7.6, 7.11 is probably going to get you there with 10-pound diameter line, and a Lou's BB1. The BB1's a feathers casting reel made, and it always has been back when the old Lou's BB1s and the new Lou's BB1s, those about 18 yards further than the old ones. So the ones that used to be made. So anytime it takes distance to get depth, and no matter what you do, whatever makes you throw further is what you need to use. I use a reel like the old ones. It's a multi-stop. It doesn't have infinite and reverse. Infinite and reverse takes a lot of your feel away from you as far as feeling the bait vibrate. Where a multi-stop sort of adds it back. You can actually feel a spinnerbait blade turn. You can feel your bait vibrate when it hits the water versus when it gets 10 yards from you. So a lot of that makes a huge difference. Learning the feel is the most important thing, but making long casts is the second most important thing. And whatever you got to do, and I promise you, there's nothing that will outthrow a BB1. I have tested every reel, unless it's come out in the last few weeks and I hadn't thrown one, there's nothing that's even probably within 10 yards of it. So when you can throw a crankbait 70 yards, and that's about what you can throw the 25.5 dredgers. Now the 10XDs and stuff like that, yeah, you can get them out there with about anything because it weighs 3 ounces, 2.5 ounces. So it's going to wear you down. Things wear me out, but they'll get down there. But a lot of times those big baits just don't catch them.
Yeah.
It's really a little bit overkill. And some places I feel like it spooks fish, but there's other places that, it's what you need. So, and actually the people that don't strike ain't on lose. So,
gotcha.
I wouldn't want to say anything bad. I'm just telling you sort of the facts of how they are.
Yeah.
But the people listening, if they'll learn, go out in your yard. I mean, that's why I can tell you that a 7.6 will throw 8 yards further than a 7-footer, because I throwed it 1,000,000 times out in the yard just to see what the difference was.
Yeah.
And to throw a crankbait a long way is hard because of the lip, the way it catches air. And to throw a crankbait 70 yards, that's a normal 3.25 inch crankbait, is a heck of a throw. That's just a heck of a throw. Even the new flats, the Fritts size that we got come out, you can throw 40+ yards. And that's just a long cast.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially with a flat crankbait.
Yeah, just for a flat crankbait, most of them you're not going to throw 30 yards. But like I say, the BB1 will throw it 40. But it's a good throwing crankbait, and we design them to throw good, because my number one thing is if it don't throw good and it doesn't wind good, I don't want to have any part with it. I want to have something that's fun to fish. So
that's right.
All that stuff sort of goes into perspective there. But for those out there listening, if you want to throw hard, just go borrow your buddy's BB1 and throw it, and you're going to be impressed. I mean, you could very well see that the people that have those throwing 20 yards further than you're throwing. And that's very, very possible.
I've heard good things about that reel, just with other guys that have fished them, just using it for other baits and all that stuff. Just it's a good reel.
Well, the multi-stop's a good reel to fill with. If you're throwing a chatterbait or spinnerbait, I mean anything, a jerkbait, but it's just the distance that reel has, and it's built on the basis of the old reel. So that's one reason, we can get so much distance with that reel. And it doesn't break you up. I mean, retails for $159. So,
yeah.
And it's got a big handle where it don't wear you out when you're cranking, you're winding, and it just has everything you need to crank with. So it is the ultimate reel.
Now, when it comes to gear ratios, that's been a big topic with us when we talk to a lot of other pros, and it seems like a lot of people are going to the higher speed reels, but y'all also know that your lower speed reels are great for cranking. Do you stay with that, or have you gone to a higher speed reel?
No. It's the problem you have. The reel that I use is 5-1-1. It's 21 inches per turn. That's just like the old Lew's, the old 5500 Garcias. A lot of those old reels, most of them were 21 inch per turn. And even the old reels were 4-7-1. Ours is 5-1-1, but the spool diameter still makes it 21 inch per turn. Well, you think, I'll go up one ratio. And you go up one ratio and you say a 6.4. Well, you're about 28 or 29 inches per turn, which is 8 or 9 inches difference. And you sit there and turn your hand as fast as you wind the handle and start counting up those inches and see how much difference it is. And what happens is, yeah, you can get fish to bite at it, but you just don't catch near as many of them. Yeah. And you get a lot of back hookups, and it's just not the perfect combo. Now, if you go to a 7-5-1, an 8-1, you're looking at 36 inches per turn. So there's no retrievable bait that needs to be on that high speed reel. They're just, you might throw a frog on it. Yeah, you can throw a Carolina rig, you can throw plastic on it, but as far as a crankbait, a spinner bait, I put a chatterbait on by mistake one day, and I was down in Florida, and I threw it, and I was winding, and I couldn't never get the bait to even go down on the. It just stayed on top of the surface. I thought, what in the world is wrong with this bait? And I kept messing with it, looked down there, and I saw 7.5 to 1 on my reel, and I said, that's the problem right there. And I can't slow down, and some people probably can, where you can barely wind the handle. I'd rather stay busy and keep a good rhythm, and I
Yeah.
feel like I can catch more of the bites. But there's a place for high speed reels, but it ain't on cranking or retrievable baits. I can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always tried to stay to the lower speed reels myself, but you talk to so many different. Every pro's different. You know what I mean? Every fisherman's different and
Yeah,
how they set up and how they feel and what they're comfortable with. But we talk to
yeah.
so many more
Six
people
eight,
about it.
6'4", 6'4" would be that would be maximum what anybody should ever use. Not that you can't throw it and get bites, but the problem is you cut your percentage from about 90% catch ratio. You knock that down to about 60, maybe 65% at best. So, and most time you're going to cut it in half. So half the bites you get, you're going to lose half of them. So, and it's all because unless you can control the way you wind, would be the only way you can do it. And I mean, when you slow down, you sort of get out of rhythm, and when you slow down, you can't throw your bait as good as you can with your normal rhythm. So a lot of it depends on your normal rhythm. And I think 5-1 to 1, 21 IPT fits more people's rhythm than any other ratio out there. I have used a 5-6 to 1 a little bit when throwing a lipless bait, and it's right there too, 23, 24 inches per turn. So, that I think that's my maximum. But I know a lot of people that throw a 6-4 to 1, and that's on the very top end. But like I say, you're 9 inches more per turn than you are with a 5-1. So
Yeah. Well, that's some good information there. And like I say, you touch base just in case somebody missed it. You still go to that and your 10-pound test line to get that maximum depth, and that's fluorocarbon, right?
no, I don't use I used to, but fluorocarbon. Me and fluorocarbon don't get along with crankbait just because I stretch it out. The way I throw so hard, and it actually gets stretched, and I'll start breaking it at lunchtime.
Oh
And
wow.
I've used all different brands, and it just gets, how 8-pound line and a shaky head, you get it hung up. It sort of breaks real hard the first time and pretty hard the second time. Then it starts getting easier
Yeah.
to break. I mean, everybody that's listening knows this, and it's because the line it gets maxed out and it gets stretched out and it starts getting brittle. Well, that's the way it is when I'm throwing a crankbait. I stretch it by lunchtime. It's like, man alive, I just throw it, my bait goes up there in the trees because it breaks my line. So it actually caused me to win a tournament one time, a long time ago when 4.0 first come out. So anyway, needless to say, I do not suggest throwing 4.0. A good mono low stretch.
Yeah.
If you can find you a braid that has low stretch, I use some of the X5 braid, but you have to use you still want to stick with 10-pound diameter, not 10-pound test.
Exactly.
Because you get 10-pound test, you ain't going to throw it nowhere. It's going to jam up down your spool. You got to have that 10-pound diameter. And another thing about line that people don't realize, they say, well, I can use 12, I'll be fine. And yeah, 12's okay, but you got to realize when your bait's vibrating, in other words, the lips going back and forth, that line has to go back and forth cutting the water. So the bigger it is, the more it slows that down and the less lively your crankbait is. That's why I've always said with a small bait, use 8, with a bigger bait, use 10, and that's just the best way to fish it. It puts out maximum vibration, and it's maximum liability. In other words, it's just lively as it's ever going to be. And believe it or not, and I've seen it many times, 14-pound line is the heaviest line I've ever used on a crankbait, and I was fishing standing timber, throwing right in it, where there's a lot of big fish down Lake Falcon, and I'd never used that big a line in my life. And I could tell that I didn't get the bites I could get on 10, but I sure felt a lot better about pulling them out in big trees, especially 8 and 9 pounders. I
Yeah.
think I caught 5. I think I broke the record for FLW the first day, 38, almost 39 pounds with 5 fish.
Oh,
But
wow.
that got broke the next day, and then it got broke again the next day. But line not only means, how deep you can get it, but just how lively that bait is. And just keep that in mind. A good low stretch mono like Sensation, sometimes even regular Stren. I mean, just something, wrap line in your hand. If it's like a rubber band, it ain't what you want to use, because a lot of your feel comes through that line, and the less stretch it is, the better you can feel it. And don't use fluoro. Not if you're a hard caster and want to throw a long way, because it's going to cost you. It may not cost you the first time you do it, but it will cost you.
Yeah, and that's I have noticed that. I never thought about that with cranking, but I have done that too, where I've actually made a cast and my line snap, mid cast,
Mm-hmm.
and that,
Yep,
and
they
that,
will.
and normally that's about halfway through the day when you run
Yep.
into that.
It's
So.
happened to me for the last time, and that's been about 5 or 8 years ago. I said, "The heck with this." I mean,
Yeah.
because man, I could break it. I'm not every cast, but when I throw, it's like, man, I just kept breaking and breaking and breaking. I thought, what in the world? Then I grabbed the line and started pulling on, and I could just break it. And
Yeah.
it's like the line got stretched out and it got brittle.
Yep.
And that's what fluoro does. That's what fluoro does.
That's exactly right. Well, David, man, I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time, talking crankbait with us, fishing with us. You're gonna be at ICAST, right? I know you will be.
I will be.
We'll make a point, come by there and talk with you and shoot some video with your new crankbaits, and get some more information on them. And like I say, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and good luck to you the rest of this year.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
You have a good one, David.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.